Hi, everybody. My name is Laura. I am on the community lending team at Guild Mortgage, and I have on someone amazing, Jamey, who is going to give us some insight about some recent moves that were made. Jamey, if you could introduce yourself, tell the world who you are, please.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Laura. It's so great to be here with you today in South Florida. Hot, but a sunny day. We'll see some rain showers, I'm sure, later on. But this topic that we're going to talk about today is not only central to the work that I do at the Mortgage Bankers Association, but for millions of families across the country. So excited to hear, a little bit more about what you want to know. But again, my name is Jamey Lynch, and I serve as the Vice President of Political Affairs at the Mortgage Bankers Association. And in the simplest terms, my job is really to connect the voices of all of our members, which does include, the lenders, the servicers, the independent mortgage bankers, the borrowers, our big banks, and then the many vendors that partner with us to support the industry and make sure that their voices are heard clearly in Washington.
What is going on in the world right now? What just happened recently?
Well, yeah, let's not bury the lead. So
Yeah.
the 21st Century Road to Housing Act is now law, so we can all breathe a little bit better. I know this weekend there was a lot going on, but there is a lot to also celebrate for. And so the president neither signed nor vetoed this legislation. So under the Constitution 10-day rule, it automatically became law on Saturday, July 11th at 12:01 a.m. And this is really a major milestone for housing policy and for, again, MBA members and families across the country. And so for someone who's hearing about this for the first time, I think the easiest way to describe this is it's a major legislation that has happened in such a bipartisan manner in almost a decade. And that's something, again, to really be celebrating.
For somebody that isn't in the industry, how does it benefit them? How does it benefit just a Joe Schmo on the street?
Well, it's really meant at a high level to tackle the core challenges that families are facing in today's market. So, of course, the limited housing supply in certain markets, the rising costs. There's the outdated federal programs that MBA works with on the regulatory side daily, and there's a lot of the barriers that make it hard for first time generation home buyers to have the access to mortgage credit. Um, and again, overall, the goal is simple of this law. It's really to increase supply, improve the affordability, and modernize the federal housing system so it better reflects today's market, which, as we know it, is very fast moving.
I was just going to ask, why do you think it's needed now? I mean, maybe not now more than ever, but why do you think this is perfect timing for this?
Well, it's really perfect timing because, well, first of all, we've been working on this piece of legislation for over the last 2 years, not only with working closely with lawmakers, but on the MBA advocacy side, which is something, again, political affairs. I'm really on the political engagement side. So I've been working with our members and our advocates to talk through, hear their stories, their realities, and their everyday life, and make it make sense to lawmakers on how this impacts not only their bottom lines, but their customers as well. And so it's taking that grassroots advocacy where we hear from our members, whether that's in person at the National Advocacy Conference, which I know you are very familiar with, but it's our once a year fly in that we do. But we also have our upcoming Advocacy in August campaign that we host, where when members are back in their states and their districts for the congressional August recess, we encourage our members and our advocates to meet directly with them. So this is not something that just came up out of the blue. It is something
Mhm.
we've been working on, and it really helps specifically significant changes within the package, including we talked about the federal programs. So like the HUD oversight, FHA multifamily and USDA rural housing access and reforms. Some other important features that the bill includes is the manufacturing and module homes and the access to, the community banking, environmental review, and some of the appraisal related changes that some of our members see. So it tackles those challenges, but it also encourages the communities to, again, be more educational about what is out there for these first time home buyers, and making sure they have access to financing and getting the access to the credit that they need in order to think about even making these big purchases. And really, the American dream is what we're all striving for. And my hope and what makes my job so exciting at the Mortgage Bankers Association is really helping these families not only grow, within their community, but also being able to call something theirs.
Can you speak can you speak a little bit to MBA's role and being this sort of middle ways, this kind of propulsion for a loan officer or people in, the mortgage industry to see change happen, to be there on the front lines, to help change move forward? Where does MBA fit in all of that?
So again, some of the specific pieces that I kind of already mentioned, but just not to turn this into any type of like legislative briefing, but just to get into a little bit of the weeds of the education materials that we put out there, what we are most interested and excited about, some of the bills, or some of the changes within the legislation and now law, is we were able to preserve some of the USDA rural housing service reforms that, again, make it easier to finance those ADUs and allow those smoother USDA loan assumptions. So it really makes a big deal for those rural communities and multi-generational households. And then we also codified the GSE's reconsideration of value approval process, which, say that 3 times fast, and
Brilliant.
without adding any new lender liability. So it gives those borrowers really a fair path to the challenges that they face in the appraisal process. And then we are also successfully able to keep out the expansion of inefficient first look requirements on some of these foreclosed property sales. So this allowed us to really slow down the process and help those borrowers experience unnecessary burdens, and especially for those servicers. And then there's one other piece that was part of this legislation that I do want to call out, because I know it is something that we've talked about a lot, but it's the law included a provision requiring large institutional investors to sell the newly single family build to rent or BTR homes within the 7-year period. Now, this is a little murky in the way it's written. So we're working closely still with congressional leaders and the Department of Treasury to make sure that the implementations that reflect some of these BTR provisions are made clear and how they were meant, like intended. And so we want to keep working so that we can help our members establish these BTR communities.
Now that this is real life, this is pen on paper, it is real. Who stands to benefit the most?
Honestly, anyone who has ever felt shut out of the market. So that includes the first generation buyers, young growing families, veterans, those in all individuals in rural communities. And it really benefits the lenders too, because it provides a more healthy, stable, market, and provides the access that the housing market supports. And we know that the real estate finance industry is the whole ecosystem that is made up. It really does support the economic flow of the market today. So with this bill, it really hopefully does grow stronger and more sustainable growth in communities across the country.
So, Latino homeownership continues to grow faster than any other demographic. We know this, we have the numbers, but barriers still exist. Could legislation like this close some of those gaps? Could it help? Could it hurt? Where does it fit?
The Road Act can absolutely help close some of these gaps. And we've mentioned some of these before, but it does help expand the housing supply. It strengthens the counseling and education. And there's a lot of educational programs on a local level that a lot of people are not aware of. And hopefully this law is something that will help educate those individuals who, these lenders that are educating first time and first generation home buyers about the what's accessible for them to get the lowest possible cost when applying for their first home. And so it's improving access to safe mortgage credit. Again, supports these first generation buyers who are navigating this process for the very first time. And an informed lender, loan officer is someone who can help an uninformed buyer. And so this process is very important. And I do think that this law now does help bridge some of these gaps.
Talking a little bit more about these gaps, do you think Latino voices or other minority voices are represented when housing policies are being discussed? Do you think that's something that is now more so than it was in the past, or do you think it still needs some work? But do you think those voices are represented when you're on the floor?
I do think that it has gotten better, but there are still some hurdles that we need to, overcome. And it's these limited starter home inventories. We talk about housing supply, but it's also experiencing some outdated zoning rules and uneven access to down payment assistance. And again, that lack of education, financial education, that is really where the rubber meets the road. And where it can honestly make a big difference. So I still think that there's work that needs to be done.
And I do feel that sometimes that's where the mix up between politics and housing policy get messed up. Can you explain the difference a little bit in layman's terms? Because I feel like
Yeah.
that's something that people always jumble together. So
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing is politics is really about parties and elections, and then housing policy is about the people, and that's something that it affects everyone no matter where you live. Um it's about how you build the stability and the opportunities that we all have for the future. And again, housing affects everyone, no, regardless of political affiliation. So organizations like the Mortgage Bankers Association, we stay laser focused on really how can we impact homeowners and the future homeowners. And we try to keep the conversation with lawmakers across the country at a real ground level and focusing on data, the people, our members, and really trying to think through practical solutions. So it's not just all the political noise that you read about or hear about on a daily basis. And so I would say that's the biggest difference. And that's how MBA really does know how to play the political game well. And I'll go back to the beginning, Laura, where you asked me specifically about what I do on a daily basis. And I did mention a little bit, but really, political affairs, I'm on the political engagement side. So my main responsibilities are raising money for our political action committee, really honing in on support for our pro industry candidates, those federal candidates and lawmakers who do support our industry, growing our grassroots network, which is the Mortgage Action Alliance,
Mhm.
and really working with our members to, again, make sure that not only are they staying compliant, but also, the legislation and the policies that we help protect every day, whether that's positive or negative, that our members are having a say, and we're providing, again, those practical solutions for them to better their businesses. Because at the end of the day, we all want more business and recognition for the things that we do on a daily basis. That you don't need to be a member of MBA to be a member of the Mortgage Action Alliance. So I do have to say that again, this is a nonpartisan platform that you are able to be a part of and still keep abreast with everything that's happening on the legislative and political level, at all levels of government. So local, federal, and state. So I encourage you to visit mba.org/MAA to find out more about how you can be a part of the Mortgage Action Alliance and stay engaged and informed, because that's what's most important as an industry practitioner, is to really stay informed about what's going on at all levels of government and really helping bridge the gap between the national and state levels.
And I mean, as a professional in this industry, you'd just be doing yourself a disservice by not being informed and by not being consistently educated with what's going on, especially when the access is that easy. So appreciate the call out. Absolutely. I will put it on the screen. No one can ignore that. Okay. Well, your perspective obviously is very valuable and you have this experience from the conversations that you've had with lawmakers and beyond. Is there a genuine understanding that you see of the housing challenges that we're facing today? Does it give you hope? Do you feel like the conversations happening in Washington today are good? Are we moving in the right direction for the average home buyer?
Yes, absolutely. And this bill is something that is, again, a national priority and it affects millions of Americans across the country. And I really do think that we are moving in the right direction. And the best part about this piece of legislation and now law is that it was so bipartisan, and that is not something that you see every day in on Capitol Hill. So I think we are moving in the right direction. I think there's still more work to be done, and we can only do that by hearing directly from the individuals that it impacts on a daily basis.
Well, that's good to hear. All right. Oof. So this is a question that we get often. It's just something on everyone's mind. Simple, point blank. Uh, if someone wants to buy a home, should they continue preparing now? Should they wait and see? What advice would you give them? I want to buy a home. Should I wait?
Well, let me be really clear that I do not have a crystal ball, nor am I an economist. But what I can say is that preparation always pays off in everything that we do. And so legislation can help, and market conditions will continue to shift as we see them today. But we cannot replace some of the fundamentals. So, again, building your credit, saving for that down payment, taking in the lender early. So, again, establishing that relationship, becoming knowledgeable, and really getting educated about the home buying process, I think is our biggest flex.
Thank you so much, Jamie, for sharing your insights, for helping us break down what this legislation means way beyond the headlines. Because I know we're reading stuff, we're seeing stuff online, and people are getting overwhelmed, and it might just be information overload. So, as we discussed today, passing a bill is just the beginning. The real impact comes through, our implementation, collaboration, work that housing professionals we have to do, education every day to expand home ownership. So, to all of you watching, we hope this conversation gave you a clear understanding of what's changing, why it matters. If you found this discussion valuable, make sure to like, subscribe, share it with someone who's passionate about housing, lending, or building stronger communities. There will be links here, for anyone that wants to join the Mortgage Action Alliance. And thank you so much for joining us for another great conversation. We will see you next time. Thank you, Jamie.
Thank you so much, Laura, for having me.